Transform is almost like an invisible shape that's the parent of the actual sphere shape itself. So wherever the parent moves, the child goes, but the child can move, and the child's not going to move the parent. That's like a quick rundown of a hierarchy. We're going to get more into hierarchies next week. But we could just go back and turn off display, turn off shapes in the outliner, because typically we're not looking at shapes. We're just looking at kind of both those things as a single item, at least within the outliner for organizational purposes. Okay, so I think there was a couple of bugs that popped up in the class. One of them was where the left mouse button was acting like the right mouse button. And that happens to me sometimes. So like instead of like clicking and selecting like that, you would see something like this. And it would just pop it would just pop up, and you'd get frustrated like, why can't I click on my object? I just want to select it, right? So if that happens, you just have to close down Maya and restart it. So that's super frustrating, but I don't know. It's just a bug in the software. Another thing that happened was we had a student lose the channel box, and that just disappeared. So I'm going to simulate that. So if you click on where it says channel box here, this layer editor thing, it's like a little tab. It's kind of hard to see, but you could click it and drag it, and then it tears it off. It's its own little window that might get closed by accident. And all of a sudden it's like, oh man, where's the channel box? So if I go to Windows and go to General Editors, I could find my channel box and layer editor right there. So I would click that. Now it's popped up again as its own little window, but if I grab my mouse and move this over to the right edge, and then we get that little blue line that pops up, that's how you dock it with the UI again, the user interface. So now when I select my sphere, we have all this stuff, and I can zero this out. So now, the transform is at the origin, but I actually selected all those vertices and I yanked them off into space, and that's why this is over here. Okay, let's see. What else did we go over? I went over the basics of like a CG pipeline, so I could show that again. So let me bring up that little slideshow. Oh, that's my demo reel. Let me grab the slideshow. Cool. So typically the first step, I guess really the first step is drawing out, or like an art designer or a character designer would actually sketch out what you want your character to look like. And then from the art department, that would go to like the modeling department, and a 3D modeler would take that and actually build a 3D mesh based using that 2D artwork as a reference. And from there, we would take that 3D mesh, and instead of having a stagnant mesh that can't bend or do anything, we would add a rig to it. And what rigs are is a system of controls. Think of it as like a 3D puppet. So think of your animator as like a puppeteer, and the rig is like a little puppet where you yank on these controls, and like if you rotate this chest control, it would bend his chest forward, things like that. Then you would actually animate these controls and set keyframes, but the rigger sets up the deformations on like how the shoulder bends, like what the elbow looks like when it creases. Is there like a bicep bulge when the elbow bends and flexes? Things like that. How the clothes deform and how the facial shapes function. Next, we would have texturing, and typically while people are rigging, someone else is doing texture work, and that involves actually going in and painting color maps on the 3D mesh. So here we have, it looks really weird because there's no shadows, there's no highlights, it's like flat shaded, and they just go in and kind of use, you could grab from photographs or wherever and just kind of clone and paint on little freckles and blood vessels and age spots and all the nasty stuff that makes us look human, right? You would paint that on if you want a photorealistic human like this one. And next, they also paint a displacement map, which is a black and white map which kind of determines the height of the surface. So let's say if you have like a little pore, there'd be like a little black dot, or if you have like a little pimple with a bump, that would be like more of a white dot or like a white spot on the map, on the image map. And that's what gives you all this little cool detail, these little wrinkles in the lips and little wrinkles around the eye and all that stuff. And this would be the fur and the hair groom. So an artist would go in and set up all these different, these bright kind of lines are the guides. So the artist sets up these guides, and then Maya kind of interpolates between them and actually makes the little hair strands based off of these guides. And you can add things like noise and waves and curls and all kinds of like little filters on top of that to make it look more natural. And even there's like this peach fuzz layer on the face. And if you look on this next rendering, the hair looks beautiful. And you can actually see like the light catching this peach fuzz right here, which gives it like an extra layer of realism. So this is an actual rendered image where lights were simulated, shadows were calculated, and there's even something called subsurface scattering. That's where the light hits your skin and kind of bounces around within the skin. And, you know, like if there was like a light behind your ear, it would kind of make your ear glow a little bit. Or if you think about like soap or a candle, like candle wax, it's not opaque like how an eggshell would be. That's subsurface scattering, but we'll get more into that later on. And then I showed a little video, which is not popping up. No worries. All right, oh, there it is. For some reason now it's popping up. So this is a video from a studio called MPC, and they did the Lion King characters. So if I play that, hopefully this will play. Sorry, my internet at home is super slow. It's almost like dial-up over here. If this doesn't play, I'll just send a link out to you guys so you can watch these. There's two videos. Oh, here we go. So you can see at the top, there's this line, and they actually used muscle, bone, and skin simulation to get realistic deformations and muscle movement in the skin. And it's kind of blurry and poor quality here, but there's some really cool stuff. And here are some facial shapes. So these are sculpted by an artist, and they get blended in and out with these wrinkles and all this cool stuff. So somebody sat there and put all that time and effort into those shapes. So I was saying before, you get some really cool stuff, like the scapula sliding underneath the skin when he walks, and all kinds of cool stuff with these muscle simulations. The next one is a time-lapse progression video of an artist creating this female character. He starts out in ZBrush, which is a different modeling package, but there's similar tools to this inside Maya, where you could kind of start out with a sphere and start to sculpt some stuff. And I'll actually, just for fun, I'll show you a little bit of that at the end of this video, so you guys can play around with that if you want. So he kind of starts fleshing out this really dense mesh with lots of points and vertices and edges on it. And he actually sculpts his face, and he ends up with